Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Digital Identification and Onboarding session. Moderated by Maria Staszkiewicz, President, European Digital Finance Association, with the participation of Professor J. Mark Bishop, Scientific Advisor, AFF2023, Kristofer von Beetzen, Chief Product Officer, Freja EID, Group AB, Antony Skarlatos, Key Account Manager, Namirial.
So once again, very good morning to everyone. I work for the European Digital Finance Association, so I'll just take 30 seconds of your time introducing what we do. We are an umbrella, a federation of fintech associations in the EU. So I'm also based in Brussels. And we try to talk to the regulators and policymakers to shape the area, to shape the world in which fintechs and financial institutions work, to make them updated for what is coming in the future. We also have a second leg, which means that we try to bring together various fintechs from European economic area to work together. And today I have the pleasure to chair, maybe for the last time, because the ChatGPT did a very good work, so I think that's the end of chairs in panels. Anyway, I'm here and I have the pleasure to have two knowledgeable gentlemen with me discussing the new trends in digital identification, digital onboarding. And we'll focus on three things. First, on the new trends. Second, on the threats and ways how to mitigate them online. And the third thing we'll focus will be the policy challenges and how to make the entire identification process less cumbersome, at least in the EU context. And the gentlemen, as I understand, will start with very short presentations discussing the work they do, the projects and products they develop. And we'll start maybe with you, Mark.
I'm Mark Bishop, Professor Emeritus of Cognitive Computing at the University of London and Scientific Advisor to AFF2023 and a former elected chair of the AISB, that's the Association for the Study of Artificial Intelligence and the Simulation of Behaviour, and it's the world's oldest body for the study of AI. 3 years ago, my entire research team at the University of London left, and they span out from the university to form a company, AFF2023. And I'm here today to outline how, together, we've subsequently worked within the fraud and insider threat community and how these insights might be of interest to those of you working in the alternative finance community as we move into an increasingly digital era. Now, one of the reasons I became interested in cybersecurity is because when I first came across the advice given by the UK National Cybersecurity Centre, which is part of GCHQ in the UK, to mitigate cyber threat, it specifically foregrounded the ability to be able to prevent, monitor and audit at-risk environments. And my team at that point had for some time been developing a powerful new AI technology, transactional analytics, that we believed we could leverage to deliver just that. Certainly, after we examined the leading market offerings working in this space, for example from companies like Darktrace, it seemed to me that the fundamental block we have in this industry is that everyone's focused on the technology platform rather than the human actors. Whereas you'll note from the key findings from the Verizon data breach report, 82% of all breaches involve some form of human input. Whether that human input could be something from innocent human error or a deliberate intent to defraud, for example. You'll also note from the findings of the Cybersecurity Insiders report how we see such a small percentage of companies that currently deploy any form of monitoring to monitor human behaviours. And furthermore, that the behaviours that the people are monitoring at the moment are typically nothing more than access right violations and identity management. So it seems to me that the elephant in the room, the key actions that current technology is not focusing on, are these high-level human behaviours. Indeed, it's a blind spot across the industry, as I see it today, that nobody's looking to flag anomalous human behavioural change inside of an organisation or a network. Specifically, behaviours characteristic of changing employee or user motivations. In sum, current technology is not interested in prevention. Indeed, most of the tools that we see in the market today are effectively only in place to provide a post-incident response capability. And that's the challenge, because such tools are merely focused on trying to identify the impact of a threat post that threat being realised. And for the organisations, the consequence of this strategy is that it opens the organisation up to problems like data loss and financial impact, for example, from ransomware. In other words, the use of such tools, once hacked, can all too readily bring into the spotlight uncomfortable organisational issues around corporate risk and compliance with concomitant brand damage. And so, working with FACT360, we developed a toolbox to provide certainly an incident response capability, but more importantly, the ability to monitor the capabilities, or actions, if you like, of individuals within a network. And we do that in a very interesting way. We do that by monitoring how people communicate. We forensically analyse their communication actions and deploy AI and machine learning to identify anomalies in their communication behaviour. And once we've identified this, we can alert the user or the driver of the technology, and data can be API'd up into the company's CM environment and integrated into its wider data protection capabilities. Now, what's critical is all this can be done with minimal privacy overheads, because at this stage, this monitoring stage, we don't look at the contents of people's communications. So we're just looking at what they do. That X communicated to Y at a certain point in a certain place and at a certain time. We're not interested in the semantics of what they're talking about. Now, in this way, the technology works out of the box across any multilingual environment, and it works even with deeply encrypted messaging. We're not bothered because we're not reading the messages. We're effectively looking at metadata. However, once we've identified a potentially serious anomaly, the next stage is to investigate whether that anomaly identifies itself as a threat. And to do that, we actually do need to look at message content. And so we've integrated deep within our platform a powerful natural language understanding capability. And this enables us to investigate the corpus of communications associated with the anomaly to see whether there's a body of evidence indicating whether that anomaly is serious and hostile. So, this toolbox itself, once it's deployed, enables users to build a full comms analytics capability, a part of a CM integration. It offers a first line of defense operational management, enabling users to quickly triage the type of incident that's occurred. It offers a second line of defense, a pre-investigation capability, almost like an early case assessment, to identify the evidence required from an investigatory perspective. And it offered a third line of defense focused on audit, being able to provide a monitoring capability across an organisation or network to automatically flag anomalous, dangerous behaviour at an early, and this is the key point in prevention, at an early pre-incident stage. Now, currently, we've evaluated this technology across a variety of different application areas, including fraud, insider threat, human resource management, supply chain risk, and most recently, in cryptocurrency regulation. So I'll very quickly run through three use cases. In this use case, we were able to identify the bad actor within 4 minutes of ingesting 1.3 million communications. Intelligence Sanctuary is run by ex-UK police and head of the National Crime Agency in the UK, and they use this tool to run a major investigation in Europe to identify fraud, which led to a major corruption case within the government of an island, which shall remain anonymous, but you might have heard of this case in Europe. And finally, our colleagues at Lancelot have successfully used the tool to provide asset recovery involving oil for money across the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for setting the ground of our discussion, because you may wonder why, well, alternative finance, and we start with fraud prevention, but since alternative finance is mainly about the digital world, where we transfer value, that value, and the person that sends it and receives it they have to be identified. That's why we started with this topic as the discussion start for the other panels. So you told us, Mark, what is important to look for and how a threat can be identified. By now we'll go to Kristofer and Antony to see how we can identify actors online.
Thank you so much. I'll try to keep this short, but Freja is an electronic identity wallet. And as you might have heard, up in the north, we don't only have snow and polar bears on the streets. We actually also have a working, functioning EID system in Sweden and especially in Norway, in Sweden, Denmark, to some extent also Finland. So what this means is that in Sweden, for example, we have two systems. It's the bank-operated EID, and then it's the private alternative, the inclusive EID that I represent, that is Freja. And this means that it's a European identity wallet. Very much like what the EU is now trying to accomplish in the large-scale pilots and the projects of building an EU identity wallet. We have already built that. So it's a mobile EID. You can use it to thousands of services. You can, get a bank loan. You can do your tax returns. You can book your doctor's appointment. You cannot basically exist in Sweden today without an EID. If you don't have an EID, the world is basically shut to you. And that's, good and bad. We'll come back to that later. But that's, I think, how the world will evolve also within the EU. So the EID is kind of the core for everything that you do in the world that has been digitalized. And it's the center of all fintech applications. It's the center of all actually democratic and all kind of citizen interaction with the community and with the world. So if we don't kind of find a way of organizing the electronic identity, it might have the risk of becoming a tool for oppression and for exclusion. And I think this is really one of the key things to discuss when we move forward in the further digitalized world of Europe. So that's short about Freja.
Thanks. And now we have the, I understand, competitor to say so. Antony works for a company, Namirial, and he will present what you offer to the world.
So thank you very much also for the invitation. I'm Antony Skarlatos. I'm responsible for Namirial, for Greece, Cyprus and Poland. I'm also very happy to be here. It's Thessaloniki actually is a city that I have studied, so very much connected with the city, with the people. I will not talk you about my student life. I will talk you about Namirial. Okay. Namirial actually is a company that it's both a software company and also a certified authority, authorized and certified under EIDAS. We are a company actually, we are in more than 20 years in the business. We grow non-stop. We have more than 3 million users. We are active in more than 85 countries, more than 800 employees. Very proud that in 2022 we have succeeded to do great numbers, like for example to mention we have accomplished more than 14 million digital onboarding processes with our solutions, and we have issued more than 10 million certificates for e-signature, making us one of the most active qualified trusted providers in Europe. We have also a significant footprint concerning the environment. And that's why actually one of the most important, one of the large environmental sustainability investor called Beetzen decided to invest on us and make us move forward. So as you see here, we have apart from we have a great expansion in all the world. We're starting from our home country, which is Italy. We have been able to, with some newest acquisitions that we have done, to have more than 21 offices around in the globe, a big office in Germany, in Austria, in Romania, in Spain, also a very good presence in North America. So we distribute our products in more than 85 countries, but we don't do it alone. We have a great network of more than 150 strategic partners that help us localize our products in every country. So Namirial, which is actually a company that is a leader in the digital transaction field, we invest in 3 areas: signature, identity, and document. And why we do that? Because we want actually to address all the use cases that we see in the market, starting from the creation of the document, the design of the document, then we identify the user if needed using an assistant or assisted onboarding solutions. Then through our innovative platform, we sign the document with all the ways, simple, advanced, or qualified signature. And of course, we have all the solutions for the post-processing of the documents, like e-archiving system. So end-to-end solutions, starting from the creation of the document to the storage of the document. So we are quite lucky to say that we have one most unique and most broad solution portfolios in the market, starting with our core business, which is e-signature, when we are experts in remote and in-person signing. Here in Greece, we have a lot of implementation starting from the telcos that they are using our solution from 2010 and later. Also the banks, the 4 systemic banks in Greece are using handwritten biometric signature of Namirial. A lot of investment also in the trust services area, where we have a variety of certificates in order to fulfill our customers' needs. As I told you, Namirial is one of the most active qualified transfer provider in the market. And actually, we are 2 qualified transfer providers, Namirial and Wanataka, something that is also unique for us. Identity proofing, digital onboarding is at the core of our business. We need to have this solution in order to be able to identify the customers in order to get qualified certificate. So we do it with video onboarding solutions. Just to give an example, in Greece, NPL companies uses our solution for signing loans and issue certificates for their customer. And also we invest a lot on self-onboarding solution with the use of AI. We try to identify a person in less than 3 minutes. Also very good experience with authentication solution. Namirial knows a lot also about the EID. The EID part, we are the providers of SPID, which is actually the EID scheme of Italy. Let me mention also the investment that we have done in the PKI sector, public key infrastructure sector, when we offer public key as a product and public key as a service, which is a trend nowadays. We have managed to create more than 32 CAs across the world. So what they do is that they we provide our infrastructure, our PKI infrastructure to them in order to issue certificates for their customer. And the last one is the document solution that we have. Let me say about point about the certified communication, which is a new solution for us. It's also a trend, and it's something that I think it's one of the best solutions for legally proof that an SMS or an email goes to the sender, to the recipient, and without the use of paper. So why we have invested in all this kind of technology, why Ambienta has decided to do such a huge investment? Because actually we don't want to make things complex. On the contrary, we want to do and to fulfill the first customer requirement that we see in the field. So making simplicity, meeting compliance. This is actually our motto. We want to keep a balance and make things as simple as possible while we keep them compliant. So we want, actually our goal is to have happy customers. We want happy people from happy departments like the marketing or the business part, that they want to have an enhanced customer experience, so that we give them our tools for that, while we want also the compliance teams to be sure that we do everything under the right and the secure way. And we try to do it with having as few interactions as possible. And to conclude, let me say what actually makes Namirial unique, what's a company that is investing in digital onboarding field should have in order to be successful. First, there are 5 things. First is to be focused on and to know very well the compliance and the regulatory framework, not of course in one country. We are present in 85 countries, so we know a lot about what's happening in the whole world. We have a big legal team, and with the help of our local partners, we need to know this legislation. The next thing is that we need to give a flexible deployment to our customer. Of course, the cloud remains the first option nowadays, but also on-premise installation is something that we see a lot also in Greece. Fully customizable branding. We don't want to have powered by Namirial. We want to see that our solutions are fully branded based to our customer logos and requirements. One-stop shop, very important nowadays for a vendor to have all these solutions in order to be able to provide to their customers a variety of solutions, starting from different types of certificates, different type of identification methods. And the last one, my favorite actually one, our system are designed for the omnichannel. As Namirial, we want to have them consistent with all the channels that our customers decide to have. So either you are visiting a branch, either you sit in the couch of your house, or you walk in the beautiful Paralia of Thessaloniki, for example. You have to do all the things as simple, as easy as possible, and as simple and as compliant as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antony. I'll take it from where you stop, and because you mentioned you want everyone in the process to be happy. And I think with the technology we have at hand, AI, biometrics, other technologies coming soon. In the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years, the identity process online has changed a lot, and it's less cumbersome, but I think still we are not using the full potential of the technologies we have. So I would like you and Kristofer to give us a very short overview, what from your perspective would be the ideal identification and onboarding, digital onboarding process, given with the technologies we have at hand. What would be the process you imagined despite the, for example, regulatory obstacles we have? So let's try to be more, maybe a little bit more sci-fi here, but let's check what is possible.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think if you were to ask me a few years ago what's going to happen with the music industry, you could look at what actually happened in Sweden back then with the streaming music. I mean, you had CDs, you had, buy a file of music in Apple, whatever else. And then it turned out the streaming music was kind of the winner in this game. And now I think everyone agrees that streaming music is the way of the future, until we find some AI music that just beams into your brain or something like that. But for now, streaming music is kind of the way. And I think if you want to look what's happening with the digital identities is actually to look at the Nordics. So today there's basically 2 ways of how you can do an onboarding and an identification online. So either you have these methods as you supply, for example, where you register your ID card, you take a selfie, and then the vendor kind of is responsible for making sure that this is actually Kristofer, and I as a vendor need to be responsible for this process. And for me as a user, I need to do this every time I'm going somewhere. To this bank, I need to show my ID to this bank, and to that bank, and to this insurance company, and so on. So that's one of the ways. What's happened in Sweden is that you do this once. You register for your EID, your electronic identity, and then the door is open to thousands of services, to everything. So you just do this onboarding once, and then you can, reuse it to all kinds of instances: public services, private services, finance, etc., etc. And I'm betting that this is the future, not only because I've invested all my time and money in the company doing this, but simply because it's really what has been proven to work in the Nordics. There hasn't come anything the last 10 years to kind of divert from this. There's not a single one of these companies that offers these onboarding services. They don't have any business in Sweden and Norway, for example. So that would be my bet, actually, because it's so much simpler from a user perspective. It meets all the requirements from compliance and so on. It's simple for the businesses and for the users. So that's my bet, and I don't know if you agree, because you supply different methods, so maybe you can have a different view on this.
Okay, thanks a lot for the question. Actually, it has to do with what I have mentioned about the slider and how we want to keep the balance between simplicity and compliance. Actually, digital onboarding and digitalification is something that was, how to say, the tyranny of this slider. We struggled a lot in the previous year in order to keep this as quick as possible, as user-friendly as possible, so we always have to compromise. So I think what helped us a lot in the last few years is, for example, the AI and machine learning technology that we are using. So we have now the solutions in our hands that we can, and based on our newest acquisition that we have, the Netheos company that has a unique solution for self-identification. We managed to do face recognition, liveness check, and ID document verification, for example, in less than 2-3 seconds, with a success rate of around 95%. So this is quite important to have it and to give it to our customer. We have several projects in financial sector, which actually is the pioneer, and we always start with them because we have to give this an enhanced experience to their customer. So with the AI, we feel quite safe with what we're doing, and I think we can conclude this process. In the past, we needed more than 10 minutes to do it with a video onboarding platform. Now we need 2 to 3 minutes to conclude all of it.
So I understand the process has shortened, but maybe there are other ways to do it. Are we close from the moment when I turn my computer on or whatever device and I'm already being identified? Mark, where do you think we stand?
Prior to being invited to join the panel today, the idea of digital identities had not been an area I'd spent a lot of time thinking about. But so my first exposure to your companies was through this involvement in this panel. But I can bet you every single person in this room has used digital identity. There are ubiquitous systems, like my Apple ID works out of the box, enables me to access services online fairly robustly, and I'm sure, well, I know that Google have similar offerings. So I'd like to ask my colleagues on the panel, what advantage does your type of electronic identification have over the ones that have just become ubiquitous online, the Facebook, the Google, and the Apple IDs?
Yeah, that's a good question. And first of all, I can be actually whoever I want on Facebook. I can be Santa Claus on Facebook or Mickey Mouse. And if I go to the bank, I need to be Kristofer. And the real difference here is that to comply with the EIDA standards and for the different regulatory standards of identity, for example, to enter a public service like the tax authority, or to take a loan or do financial transactions online, you need to establish the identity at the core, so to say. So a Google identity doesn't do it, an Apple ID doesn't do it, for example, or a Facebook identity doesn't do it. I mean, Facebook could, if they would, you know, start an EID branch. But then the question is, do you really trust Facebook for your identity? Because identity is very much a trust business at the core. And I don't think that Facebook and all the other big tech players in the United States has proven that they are, you know, in the trust business really. That's why I think they will have a bit of a hard time doing this. Apple is perhaps a bit on a different side here. But I mean, there's nothing stopping them doing an electronic identity. EID is the next big thing. If you control the identity, then you control basically everything in the digital space, including fintech. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to go this direction. But if you look at what the EU is trying to do with the EU identity wallet, is building moats to the big tech American companies, not for them to take over the identity as well. That's the core of the EU project here. For those of you who've been involved in this, you can see this very clearly. So I think the EU here is trying to create something that is really, you know, establishing the identity as the core European asset, not something for the big tech.
Kristofer, maybe we'll leave the question of the EU wallet for the as the last one of our panel today. I wanted to ask you and Antony again about the trends, the latest trends in identification. In our discussion prior to the panel, we mentioned the concepts of payment orchestration or even identity orchestration. What's that? Is it something that will make the process of identification less painful?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about payment orchestration. Actually, what we have seen also in Namirial, with all the projects that we have worldwide, is that we see very cross-border, a lot of cross-border transactions and payments. So it's going to be inevitable for the merchants in order to be able to survive this globalization of e-commerce, to use and to deploy one-stop platform. This is very important nowadays to do this in order to be able to compete and handle actually their complex payment flows that they have. Nowadays in the market, I don't see any PSP, any payment service provider that can do things as best as possible in every country. So what the merchants will do at the end is that they will integrate their payment processes, their authorization processes, in order to achieve actually two things. First of all, they will need to reduce their risks because they have to adapt in the local payment culture in each country. And second one is they want to give this united, this enhanced experience to their customers, trying to give a lot of different payment methods and have a seamless checkout workflow for them. And with the use, I will repeat again about the use of AI and machine learning. I think payment orchestration is here, will be a huge trend in the next few years, and everything will be, of course, in favor of merchants and customers, at least for technical perspective.
Kristofer, you mentioned identity orchestration might be the step further, even after payment orchestration.
Yeah, if you think about it, what is MasterCard or Visa doing, really? What's their core business? They're identifying you to your money, right? So all the online payments are doing things that are identifying you to your money in some way. So if you look at the payment orchestration situation, let's say you're checking out from an online store, you can have a Klarna, buy now, pay later. You can have a direct payment with a card. You can have some fintech transaction of account to account, different versions of paying this item. What all of these methods connect to in the end is that you need to identify to the bank account, to the Klarna service, to the credit card in some way, right? So it all comes down to you identifying. So why do we need this middle step of all these payment technologies? Really, if you think about it, when it all comes down that you need to do the identification at the end, why not just skip all the stuff in the middle and just go directly to the identification? That's how I envisage the future in give it 5-10 years, that identity is the payment. You are your money, and all the stuff in between will not be seen. You just identify, and then you have your invoice or your payment directly or account transfer. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen.
Can I
Yes, of course.
kick in there? Because with traditional finance, that's patently the case. But with crypto, it seems you have an intermediate layer. You're not connecting a transaction with a person, but with a wallet, or specifically an address in a wallet. So with crypto, one can use finance online without a link back to a personal identity, other than for an address in a crypto wallet. So it isn't, and the advocates of crypto, of which I'm not one, suggest that this is going to be an ever-increasing means of transacting on the web. So it doesn't seem to me that we're going to have this link to a personal human identity.
Well, actually, you need to identify to your crypto wallet as well. I mean, you need some kind of password or something to identify to your crypto assets, right? Actually, I heard something about like 18 to 20% of all bitcoins in the world are useless because people forgotten their passwords. Isn't that an irony? So without that identifier in the form of a password as it is now, you can't identify your money. So you need that as well to identify to crypto. So you never get away from...
But that's different from a personal identity that identifies me as Mark Bishop.
Well, you can use an electronic identity to identify to something without revealing your personal attributes, actually. That is not the prerequisite.
Well, I think, but you made the point earlier that in contrast to Facebook, where I'm not sure this is actually true, but you made the point that one can be anything on platforms like Facebook. And you stressed the importance for online transactions of identifying someone as a person, a real person.
Yeah, but the core here is that for you to be able to make a financial transaction within the EU, you cannot be anonymous, right?
But you can with crypto.
Yeah, with crypto, but that
And
is
I think,
being...
sorry, gentlemen, I think we are getting to a clash of I wouldn't say mentalities, but clash of different solutions here. And I think we'll continue this debate in, for example, in the DeFi panel. But Mark, I wanted to ask you about something different. All those digital technologies and solutions make our life easier. But at the same time, it's also much easier to have our own funds deleted, as we have seen in the cartoon. We have successfully deleted all your money. It's done within a millisecond. How can we prevent that? I mean, the human factor is important, as you mentioned. 82% of all the fraud and crime-related issues have a human factor as the main one. But you are working with AI to prevent that.
Yeah.
But we also have AI attacks and AI fraud. So it's a really wonderful word, but how we can make the life of a digital identity safer with AI tools?
Yeah. Well, there are tools. Some of our competitors are looking at using AI to spot AI attacks, and that's not the area I have particular knowledge of. We're interested in how humans attempt to suck the money from your wallet, to defraud you in some way or another. And our central insight, and I think it's really interesting, I can illustrate how our central insight works with an anecdote from a conversation I had with my daughter, who's 9. And my wife and I we align on a lot in parenting, but there are certain issues that we don't. And one was, for me, the importance of swimming. For my wife, it's the importance of doing her English grammar homework. And my daughter and I were conspiring to try and trick my wife into letting me take my daughter to go swimming one day. And I noticed that my tone and the manner of my delivery changed when I was involved in that illicit conversation to enable me to smuggle my daughter to the swimming pool instead of her doing her grammar homework. And that insight is at the heart of our technology. We know that when people, and it's something that's very difficult to game, when people are doing things covertly, your method of engaging with the world changes, your behavior changes. And that's our insight. So if we have access, we're not, remember, in the first stage, in the triage stage, in the prevention stage, we're not interested in what your messages are talking about. So our GDPR privacy concerns, they still exist because we're looking at metadata, but they're minimal in comparison to covert, detailed examination of your messages. Just by looking at the metadata of your messages, we can suddenly say, some strange alerts there to strange, changing behavior. And we can then start to dig down as to why that is. I remember the first time that we used this technology live, I was astonished, because remember, we're not looking at the content of messages at this stage. We had a huge public available domain of messages called the Enron corpus, and anyone who works in this field has used the Enron corpus. It's there for free to experiment with. And our technology was able to determine when key actors had got promoted and other key actors had got kicked out of the loop of command in Enron without ever looking at the contents of messages. And to me, that looks a little bit like black magic, but it works. So that's the answer I'd give to you.
Thank you. And we have a question from either the audience or someone online, and I would like to remind right now everyone to think of your questions because we are heading towards the end of our session. And someone asked a question specifically to you, Mark, about what metadata are you collecting and what is the source of the metadata?
Well, we don't collect any metadata. Our tools are used in two ways. They're used live as a prevention tool. That's the kind of use case I've been talking about this morning. And an organization will invite us in. And so we will have access to the metadata of the comms within that organization or group of people. And that's given to us by default because of the fact we've been invited in. And the second use case is post-incident, when there's been a fraud. Maria, you've lost some money and you want to find out what's happened. We're then brought in, and once a crime's been committed, we have the right then to look at emails in a corporate environment. So we would then just go straight in and delve into your comms to see what evidence we can gather as to why your money's gone missing. So there are two different cases. One is a live use case where we're only looking at metadata within a small environment for which we have permission. The people in that environment will have signed up to allow us permission to examine the metadata. The second use case is after a crime has been committed, when, again, within a corporate or within a collective environment, people give permission for their comms to be investigated.
So I understand you try first to analyze the typical communication within an entity, and then if everything goes off the typical communication, this is like a red mark? Red flag?
It's a lot more subtle than that, but basically yes. That's the intuition. We're looking for anomalous changes in communication behavior that are suggestive of changing motivations. And this, again, to give an example of this, if you're in the management board of a big collective or on the C-suite of a company, and suddenly you start communicating with a lower ranking clerk in accounts payable. Now, there might be normal human reasons why you're doing that, to do with relationships, etc. But it could also be a signal that there's something anomalous going on there. So we're looking at who people are talking to. Again, not necessarily naming them as individuals. We don't know necessarily that person is the CEO. We're just looking at the prestige of these people within an organization, which we automatically determine, and then looking for anomalous changes, and that's what we flag.
Thank you. And I think we are now coming to the most juicy question of our debate. I guess most of you have tried to do some cross-border payments, and it sometimes didn't work because either your card was issued like mine in Belgium, they have a special national scheme that didn't work online or in an ATM outside. And there are lots of similar examples. I guess each of you have one. Right now, we are discussing in Brussels, I mean, by we, I mean the institutions, but also all the actors involved in the policy making, discussing the idea of, that was mentioned already here, the EU wallet. The basic idea is that each of the member states should assign or should create at least one EU wallet that would be used by all the EU citizens. And with that wallet, and that's means of identification, you should be able to pay with a question mark, because some banks are against that, right now. You should be able to identify yourself. You should be able to access documents without passwords, etc. So the idea, I would say, is very nice. But, of course, there's always but, especially in regard to the implementation of EU ideas, and with what you said, Mark, that we already have some wallets working, and why, the question here is why we are not using that. So I would like to get to know your opinion on the EU identity wallet, and if you think it's gonna be it's gonna deliver at least 50% of what it's meant to. I don't know if Kristofer, you would like to start.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's an amazing idea. It's a very ambitious project. I think it's going to take much more time than the politicians hope it will. But it's a great idea. It's a great ambition, because if you think about it, why are the banks against this? Right? This is the alternative finance conference. It's not the traditional finance conference. There's no big banks here, controlling the billions, right? So what the banks are doing. If you look in the Nordics, who controls the identity? It's the banks, right? We're the challenger of the banks. But you need to have an electronic identity to make any kind of fintech transaction. It goes the same way in the whole of Europe, right? So if you're going to liberate the financial markets with fintech, you need to liberate the identity. And that's why I think the EU wallet is such an important thing. If we liberate identity, then you will liberate everything else. Because if you have a fintech company and a bank says, no, this is competing with my billion, trillion dollar business, I say no to them reusing my bank identity. And without that, then you're done. So for the legislators within EU, we need to have what's called a delegated authentication. It's part of the PSD2, somewhere down there in the framework, but it needs to be, really put as a law for anyone working within the EU. Make delegated authentication a part of the legislation, make that part of the wallet, and then we can have some real alternative finance in Europe looking forward.
Antony, do you see the EU ID wallet as a threat to your business?
No, of course we don't see it as a threat. Actually, it's a tool that we can use in order to identify the customers and move forward with the issuance of the qualified certificate. That is our main business. Actually, to answer your question before, we see also in the market that there is a lack of trust between the countries. So we see that the countries don't trust each other digital identity system that they are already in space. Just to give you also what we see is that the digital identity system are quite primitive at the moment, and the adoption is not as much as it should be. For example, to give you a percentage about the speed, in Italy, the ID system of Italy that we support, we see that in 2021 it was close to 40% the adoption of the Italian people, and now it's close to 54%. So we have a road to go. So concerning the e-wallet project, I mean, this is quite important. It's a huge opportunity for the EU to achieve it. And I think they should do, and we trust that they will do what they have done with the eIDAS in 2014, which is the best and the best regulatory framework in order to make signatures without the traditional way under a union legal scheme. So this is what they want to do also with the e-wallet. I think they will succeed it. They should take also parameters like technologies of blockchain. Blockchain will help them to make the approach more decentralized, not to keep details of people, of citizens. And of course, the GDPR should be also a matter that should take also into consideration on this. And I think, and then what is important to see is that the EU should try to understand the needs of the citizens in each country, and not create just an e-wallet for protectionism, for protecting the regulatory and to be in line with the regulatory framework. We need to make the approach also user-friendly, also simple, and also easy experience about, and give this united and enhanced experience that we all look for.
Yes, Antony, you mentioned protectionism, and I think it's one of the motivations behind the EU identity wallets to create something that would compete with what we already have on the market, and coming especially from the big American big techs. Mark, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, the models we've been looking at here are kind of monolithic. So we have the EU identity wallet, we have the technology that my colleagues on the panel have been talking about, which gives a unique identity to a person. There's another approach to this, which I came across in a small company in the UK a couple of years ago, and that's kind of a decentralized identification. I don't know whether you guys have come across this before. Oh, yeah. So that the insight there was that in the UK, if you're going for a mortgage, for example, you might need to have identity of a driving license or a council tax bill or an electricity bill, and you bring them all down. And this company called Factturn had a network that allowed transparently a confirmation that you are who you claim you are to be sent from disparate information sources, such as the post office, the vehicle registration authority, a bank, or the electricity suppliers. And together, this could give you an identity without there being a unique identity wallet. And I wonder what your thoughts are on these distributed approaches.
Yeah, if you ask one of these guys or girls who lost their Bitcoin passwords, they would say, I don't really like this idea of decentralized identity because they can't restore it. That's the whole point of the decentralized thing. You know, it's like you are responsible yourself. There's no central authority that's issued this identity for you. So that's one problem. The second problem is that, you know, in the financial regulations and other regulations, you need to have kind of a solid citizen identity to do things. For example, to go to the doctor, to pay your taxes and so on. So the decentralized identity, I think, will be difficult to scale in a citizen context, to be fairly honest.
Oh, okay, in the UK I noticed when we're doing major transactions like buying a house, it isn't the case that you need to take your passport down to do that. You need to have provable, verifiable sources of identity from noted trustworthy sources.
Well, the thing with the UK is that you don't have a personal identity number as we have in Sweden, and we've been a part of the UK framework for digital identity. It's a huge problem for the UK to do this because of the lack of a you know, citizen identifier. That's the key to why it's been working so good in the Nordics. That's one of the big problems for the identity wallet. Without a central identifier of citizens, it's really a hassle to do identity.
Yes, because after all, you need something that connects the physical and the digital world.
Exactly, yeah.
And with that, I would like to maybe give the last 1 or 2 minutes to questions from the audience here. I don't know if we have any. Yes?
What is your attitude to the behavioral biometrics as the method to fight the digital fraud? Do you think this could be applicable in the financial industry? Because, for example, in Central Europe, we've seen, like several years ago, some banks announced that they're testing the solution, but nobody implemented at the moment. I don't know about Nordics, but here, like, I haven't seen such an examples, but the technology is on the market. Thank you.
Yes, Antony?
Yes, actually, this answers also the question that you made about how we fight fraud and the compliance issues that we see. What we use is strong authentication solutions. So biometrics, and what we do is we are experts in biometric signature verification. This is something that we want to use. We have seen projects also in Greece that hospitals and banks are using in order to identify their customers. And in that case, we will use the signature and the verification process will include behavioral characteristics, features, like, for example, the rhythm of the handshake, the rhythm, the pressure that we put on the signature pad, the speed and then acceleration. All these features are very useful for us in order to be able to gather them and use it in to prove a future, for example, somebody maybe dispute about what the signature is. So very important for us, the biometrics, and that's why Namirial has already certified a lot of signature pads and a lot of Windows, iOS, and Android devices in order to be able to make this biometric verification as with the best quality and as easy as possible for their customers. So yes, biometrics is something that is a weapon for us for strong authentication, together with many others. Also, like for example, the two-factor authentication that we use, or the certificate-based authentication with remote or local tokens. That is also weapons for fighting fraud and identity theft. And so, thank you.
Thank you. So let's hope that the technology at hand that we have, combined with the regulation in the form of the EU identity wallet, will make our lives easier online. And EIB, I guess, is also interested in that sort of innovation. It's not only fintechs, but also the big banks in the end that are looking forward to it. Gentlemen, thank you for your contributions. If there are more questions, I guess you can ask them during the coffee breaks and today at the dinner. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.